Hello there. You're listening to 10 Questions, where we discuss the wet plate collodion process and the photographers that create these unique images known as ambrotypes and tintypes. I'm your host, Chad Shryock, wet plate photographer for Pork Pie Photography based in Fort Collins, Colorado. In each episode, I've asked a modern-day practitioner to sit down with me and talk about how they got involved with this vintage process, share some information on their gear and studio, and provide some valuable insights into their creative process. So whether you're just beginning to dabble your toes in the collodion ethers, or you're a seasoned silver bath expert, hang on and see what develops with 10 Questions. In this episode, we're heading to New York and talking to a wet plater known not only for his pop-up street photography, but a very impressive portfolio of musicians, both on and off the stage. I have to believe that this guy gets a lot of attention when setting up a dark box, a backdrop, and an old wooden camera alongside a busy street with traffic buzzing just a few feet away. What I can't believe, though, is that he can actually find a parking spot to set up all his gear in. Based in Brooklyn, New York, I'd like to welcome Justin Borucki to 10 Questions. Hey, Justin, how's it going, man?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Chad?
Awesome. Hey, thanks for sitting down with me today to talk about wet plate.
Yeah, man. Anytime. Thank you.
I've been a big fan of your work for a few years now, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about your experience with the process. And I guess maybe just to get things started off here, you're not just a tintype photographer, right?
No, sir.
So I've looked through your portfolio. You've shot Alice in Chains, Audio Slave / Soundgarden, Beastie Boys, Black Crowes. That's just partway through the Bees. Have you ever asked yourself, man, how lucky am I to be doing what I'm doing?
Oh man, yeah, it's a dream. I'm very fortunate. It's a difficult business to survive in. Hence the creation of NYC Tintype to drum up some extra cash between the freelance work back, when things slowed down.
Sure.
And it turned into a pretty a decent side hustle for me. But yeah, it's working in the music industry has been a lot of fun. I mean, music has always been my passion. So to be able to photograph musicians and make a living from it is pretty incredible. And I'm not a musician at all. I can't play. But
okay.
Love music. So
nice. So you've been involved in tintype photography for about 10 years now, or so,
about
right?
10 years. I think 9 years would be I think 10 years next year would be my 10th year. Yeah.
Okay. What really sparked your interest that made you want to add wet plate collodion to your repertoire?
Well, it's a silly story. I was at a Renaissance fair with my wife, then girlfriend, probably about 15 or so years ago, and there was a guy dressed up as a pirate making tintypes. And yeah. I don't know who it was, and I kind of observed him from far. I kind of thought I knew everything about photography. I knew what a tintype was. I didn't know the process. I didn't know you needed a dark room. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about it other than that a tintype was from the 19th century, and it just sparked my interest. So of course I went home and Googled it, and I was like, "Oh crap, this is insane." And it took 5 years before I said, "Screw it, I'm gonna teach myself how to do this."
Nice. And this guy was just set up like in a tent or something at Renaissance Fair?
Yeah, in a Jersey Renaissance Fair. I actually live in New Jersey with my family, but I'm a native New Yorker. So,
okay.
So yeah, he was just set up in a tent and no idea who he was. Like I said, it was kind of like I kind of circled him around him, like I was really like, "What's going on?" I didn't even get close. I was just like intimidated and shocked and awed. I was like, "What is happening here?" It was a strange. I was a weirdo. I don't know why I didn't go up and check it out.
Nice. So I think I saw that maybe you went to the Tintype School of Hard Knocks, right? Kind of learning from Quinn Jacobson's manual, right?
Yeah, I picked up his book, and it's great. I recommend anyone getting into the process picking up the book. He's an awesome dude as well. He's helped me out along the way as well. But yeah.
So what was your experience in learning the process? I know a lot of people try to go to a workshop or something like that just to, do more of a hands-on type instructional setting versus hey, I'm gonna take this book, I'm gonna read through it and try and glean what I can from that. Maybe watch some videos online. What was your kind of experience like?
Well, I will tell you this. It took me a few years before I worked with another wet plate photographer, Jeff Howlett, who actually showed me the proper way to pour a plate. Because that's one thing that, not pour a plate, but develop a plate. That's one thing that you can't pick up from reading a book and watching videos. That the nuances of developing that plate, like pouring a developer. So when he showed me that, I was like, oh, okay. And then I had so much more success. So I was doing it for a few years on my own, and then saw what he was doing firsthand and in person. I was like, okay, now I understand what I was doing wrong all this time. But yeah, like you've done this. You got to make all the mistakes and then figure out how to troubleshoot them, and recognize what the mistakes is so you don't, you can continue your success.
Sure. Yeah, for somebody getting started, there's typically compounding mistakes, right? So it's kind of hard to narrow it down just to what the root cause is.
Yeah.
Tell me about your first plate and how that went.
It turned out beautiful. My very first day of shooting, I remember like it was yesterday because, I just have this little model skull that's been with me since I was a teenager. It's like a little plastic skull that I built and I painted to make it look realistic. And it was probably one of the first things I photographed in my high school photography class. And I was like, it's appropriate. Let me just set this out. I set it out on a fence post. So I set up a little 4x5 camera that somehow I didn't sell over the years because I haven't shot 4x5 film in ages. And the first plate, I got a good exposure. And clearing the plate, that's when you really fall in love. When you see that plate clear through in the fixer, that's like when my heart was like, this is forever. Yeah, and then it was basically all downhill from there until you could get control of it, and I think the biggest problem teaching yourself is learning the difference between overdevelopment and overexposing. It's hard to see which, if you're doing both of them at the same time, it's hard to pull it back in unless you're overdeveloping and you're overexposing because both of they could look very similar.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that whenever you're able to get that first successful plate, even if it is your first one, that really pulls you in. You're like, oh, wow, I actually did it, right? That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an adrenaline rush, for sure.
It's like you feel like you're in on the magic trick or something.
Mm-hmm.
Do you consider yourself primarily a portrait photographer?
Yes and no. Professionally, I'm a portrait photographer. Artistically, creatively, I like to, shoot whatever I want to shoot. I like this process. What brought me into this process when I finally decided to make that plate of that skull on that October day, my goal was like I wanted to do street photography, not necessarily what you were mentioning in the pop-up streets, but like I wanted to build a rolling setup and just kind of shoot around the street. Because when I first got into photography, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an artist. I just wanted to walk around with a camera and take pictures in galleries and pay me tons of money, which of course didn't happen, right? Because I was a kid. I was a teenager. I didn't know any better. But that's what drew me into photography from the beginning. I was like, you know what? I was kind of like, like I needed a refresher. Like I needed the tintype process to spark my love in photography again. And it did exactly that. And that's what I did. I was like, I'm going to take this out. I'm going to go around. I'm going to shoot all over the place, and I'm going to make these images. And it's going to be a real big pain in the ass to do it all. So that said, it very quickly turned into me making portraits and making more money, and the whole doing it for myself thing kind of like went by the wayside. Because we have a family, we have to make money, and etc. So. Yes, I'm a portrait photographer, but I'm also a street photographer at heart. But I want to get out and do more street photography, which I really haven't done much at all since I started doing the tintype process.
Ah, nice. I take it as you were in the early learning stages, your family got to bear the brunt of sitting in the chair the most.
Yes, yes, indeed, yes, indeed.
Yep. Do you have a favorite portrait that you've shot in the past?
It's hard to say. I guess I had some favorites. There was this from the beginning. There was a family friend. His name is Barry. He was kind of like the neighborhood guy who you would pay to help do some yard work. He was like, Barry, I need to paint my house. Can you come help me? And you give him like a case of beer and a $20 bill, and he
Yeah.
would help you out. And he had
Nice.
a real character. He was like he could have been like a Hollywood character actor. Like he had such a face, and he was my heart and muse for a while. So I have some portraits of that fellow that I always loved. Outside of that, yeah, there's always a few that kind of stick out on top of my head. As some favorites. But
you've had the chance to photograph so many folks, and not just the celebrity piece of it, but you've got access to so many different interesting people being in New York, right? And just seems like every portrait that you take, I hope there's something kind of special about it. And there's been a few of those portraits that I've taken that there's been something really special about it. And maybe has been just a family friend or something like that. But it's kind of neat to think back that everything kind of fell into place just for that one split second that you're able to capture that image. I know you've got a more permanent studio now, but let's talk about why you decided to give Tintype street photography a go.
okay.
How did that come about?
Well, it started for fun, really. My wife was like, "Hey, you should, go to do some street fairs and farm fairs and stuff like that, and try to sell some portraits." And
She didn't want you to dress up like a pirate, though, right?
no, she didn't want me dressed like a
Okay.
pirate. Definitely not.
Yeah.
I tried to, but she wouldn't allow it. Yeah. So at first, it was just doing street fairs, and with mixed success. It was a lot of work and it was a lot of fun, but it just got a little tiresome. So I kind of like shied away from that. So I did street fairs probably maybe 2015, 16, like in around there. I did a bunch of them through the summer, and then basically what happened was, you mentioned doing it in the city. I was in Soho on Prince Street, just set up the camera, pointing it up, just shooting some buildings, just doing the street thing. Like I had my rolling rig on a cart, and I was just shooting street stuff.
Okay.
And there were street vendors there, and like you said, you just pull this crap out on the street, people are going to talk to you. So I started talking to the street vendors on the street there, and they were like, "You should come out here and sell your tintypes on the street." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, cool." And I'm still doing my thing. And I just got to talking to them after I was done with my shot, and like basically they were inviting me, like, "Here, you could do this here." And then I was like, yeah, but then you got to deal with parking. He's like, "No, man, the meter maids won't like bother the street vendors. If you stay with your car, you're not going to get a ticket." And that's what went, what?
Now we know the secret.
Yeah, that is the secret. But you have to have the in. There's like, it's brutal out there. There is a culture with the street vendors, and they'll, that you have to like be accepted, because there's spots. You have certain places, there's rules, there's unwritten rules, there's all of that. And I actually broke them all. Like I took up too much space, and like, but it was a lot of fun. And yeah, I had that one spot. It was out in front of Morrison Hotel Gallery, which is actually funny. It's a music art gallery. And doing so, I got to know them as well. And they ended up signing me on for my music portrait photography. Just saw my work through their gallery. So that was kind of funny how
Nice.
that worked out. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. It was just like you had to, I used to do it 2 to 3 times a week, and you have to get in real early in the morning before like the trucks pull in, because usually before the business is open, there's, trucks will come in and do any kind of work, like road work, building work, deliveries. So you have to get in there, park before all the trucks come, and you just puke out all your equipment onto the street and shoot away, But yeah, it worked out pretty good.
Nice. What's your least favorite part about doing that type of photography versus being in the studio?
The weather, man. If once it gets cold, like it gets cold, the weather, the rain, like the rain will come down on you, then you have to deal with that. I mean, really, for me, what got tiresome for me mostly was all the equipment, like just pulling the
Yeah.
equipment out of the van, setting it up, breaking it down. Like that was just a lot. And then some days you were slammed all day long. Other days you twiddle your thumbs. So it's like some days you go home with your tail between your legs. So it was kind of like, why was yesterday so good and then today was nothing? It was just the weirdest thing. So what I learned to do was I would just average out my days. Okay, so I shot 6 days a week, and then what I made in those 6 days is what I made daily. And it was like, okay, well, it's still worth my time. I still made good money.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just I think the weather and just hauling equipment in general. That's what really moved me to get my own studio, just because I was just tired of taking 2 hours to set up every time that I was shooting. Basically, I went from shooting in Soho to being hosted at different businesses. And I soon realized that I could do better by booking appointments in advance. So if a popular tattoo shop hosted me, they posted about it, and I would get bookings through their social media. And then from there, I realized, like, okay, I've tried to figure out different ways to get advanced bookings. I even tried to do it in Soho as well. I did get some bookings. I was offering specials. If you book in advance, at a discount price, you get a whole bunch of plates, and then at least I know that money is there that day. But ultimately, it turned into me looking for my own space, because I was tired of looking for people to host me. It was just, I just wanted the home. I want to make it easier.
Right.
The goal is always make work easier for you, and to have a small studio where I could just, leave all my equipment and come back to it, and just, have to set up chemicals. It makes the day, a lot easier.
Sure. What's your current setup look like then inside of the studio?
Man, I got a tight little space. I mean, because I actually only use it a couple times a month. I got a really small space. It's like 200 square feet. I got a Speeditron 4800 watt second pack as my key, and then I have a small 7B Pro Photo battery operated pack as a fill, and then I have a third 24 Speedo that I pull in sometimes if needed. And it's real simple. I don't have I work out of my dark box. I don't have running water in there. Yeah, it's real simple. It's cozy is a good way to put it.
Nice. So it was an easy transition to go from the dark box on the road to the dark box in the studio then.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, Chad. I've literally never worked out of a proper darkroom making tintypes. Always been a dark box.
Wow.
Never had running water, so I'm always doing the moving water around.
Sure.
So
use KCN or hypo for fix?
I use, I guess some people call it fake KCN. When my KCN supply ran out, I had a hard time replenishing it. And I was trying to remember his name. It's a fella in Los Angeles turned me on to this other fake KCN. It's basically ammonium thiosulfate 60%. I get it from Photographer's Formulary.
Okay. And
I mix it 1 to 3, and it clears. It washes just as easily as KCN, and that's what I've been doing for the past 5 or so years.
It's ammonium thiosulfate. I think it's a rapid fix, right?
I believe so, but I'm not 100% sure if rapid fix is exactly ammonium thiosulfate. I believe it's like a component in the rapid fix. Like rapid fix has a hardener added in it as well, which makes it very difficult to wash, if I'm not mistaken. I am not a scientist. I'm also not a historian. So I just basically know what works for me. And what I did is I was very reluctant at first, because I was just going on someone's word. And then from there, I couldn't find any information. I couldn't find anyone else using it on the forums or anything like that. So what I did was I made it a point to overwash, and I took a plate. I think Quinn might have actually suggested this to me. He's like, yeah, I heard it. I know it works fine, but he uses his KCN. He's like, just take a plate and cover half of it and put it in the sun for a while. And you'll know if you're not archival if the uncovered part turns black.
Yep.
So if you go out into my driveway and look in my van, I always have that one plate and it still has not turned black. So I'm archival, so I know I'm good. So, I have my series of trays that I rinse my water out, and I know at the halfway point, that's when I'm archival, and I go just a little bit further just to be sure. The one thing that made my street tintype pop-up studio work, the key to that success was the ProPhoto 7B and the Magnum reflector. The Magnum reflector is kind of a sports reflector. It's a large maybe 10 or 11-inch diameter reflector, and it's deep. So it really focuses the light. So if you set up, your 7B with the standard 7-inch reflector and you have a meter, it might read f8. And if you take that Magnum reflector, it'll read 22. Like it just pushes light. So it really pushes light. And a lot of different companies will have a similar style reflector, but it won't be called the Magnum. Like you just have to look for it might be called a sports reflector. I think in Speedotron world, I think it's called the sports reflector. So anything that's deep and designed to push and focus the light far away. That was the key for me to get shit done when I didn't have access to power.
Nice.
And also that the ammonium thiosulfate, when you can't get hold of KCN, how else are you going to rinse plates off, with, fixture that has to be rinsing for 20 minutes.
Wash or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. So that's also was key to my success when I lost my cyanide connect.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you could go back to the cyanide, would you do it?
I might. Honestly, I would like to do a Pepsi challenge and put them side by side and see what it looks like. Nice. However, that might upset me. Like, what if I like the KCN better and I still can't get a hold of it? You can just go back to it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it,
You're right. Right. Yeah. No, that's great. Have you used any of those eyelighter reflectors? The kind of...
No, I haven't.
Curved. I've seen a lot of folks get some interesting catch lights with those, but
they don't do anything for me. I don't really see. I like to keep it simple. Like work with one light, add a second one in if you need it. Even in my modern practice, I'm rarely using reflectors or bounce cards. It's usually the light source, and if anything, it's more negative fill. I want to block the light and cut the light and control the light.
Yeah.
For me, less light is more. Less is more for sure.
Let the shadows speak, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Exactly.
Okay. Speaking of some of the gear that you mentioned there, as far as your flashes, what about your main camera rig that you've got?
I have a old Kodak 2D. It's an 8x10 camera, and I have a reducing back. I shoot a 5x6.5 plate. It's the format that I kind of like in shooting out of. I have a few lenses. I guess a few years ago I picked up my Dallmeyer. Was it the 3B?
Okay. Yep.
I forget. Yeah, the 3B. That's the big boy with the f3 lens. Yeah, and that was my primary portrait lens. And just a few months ago, I picked up a French lens. I actually wrote this stuff down because I never remember what it is. And of course, I can't find my notes. So Paul, it's a 200 millimeter f3, and I picked it up from that guy Wetplate Dreams in Europe.
Oh, okay. Yep. Yeah, I see a lot of stuff posted there.
Yeah, he's got a good collection. I should have always went to him looking for stuff, but yeah, he has beautiful stuff, and I love the lens. And I also use this Zeiss Jenner 210 f4.5 for my group shots. So those are my three lenses I kind of cycle through.
Nice. I think we probably use the same camera. I've got an old Eastman 2D as well.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yep. Any upgrades that you would like to do? I mean, you probably know all the nuances with that camera and pretty good to go with it.
I'm good to go with it. I want to kind of, I'm working on duplicating my setup. So I have, stuff that I could take on the, be more mobile. So I could just leave my studio and then have another setup where I could just, I don't have to break down the studio. I could just load the van. So I've recently bought a Corona 5x7. The Dallmeyer won't mount on there; it's too large. But I'm able to mount the other lenses on that as well. I think I love working with the Eastman. I just wish it had a left to right shift instead of having to move that tripod.
Yep.
You just have to move it a little bit. You have to kind of it's really hard. I guess I kind of mastered the art of kicking the legs just to move it over to the left and the right a little bit.
Yeah.
But it would be really nice to have a nice camera with those shift motions on, so you could just move it over a little bit. Yeah. Other than that, that's I've been using that camera for just about past 9 years. Most of my wet plates have been shot on that camera. So.
Well, that just goes to show you how well those things were built 100 years ago, right? I mean, it's been through a lot.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So I want to say I am a bit of a hack guitarist, a lover of many genres of music, and dude, I'm really envious of some of the folks that you've had the chance to photograph. Is there anyone on your list, musician or not, that you'd really love to get into that chair and take their tintype?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, Tom Waits is my number one. Probably never even have an opportunity to photograph him.
Ah, okay.
The man doesn't tour. He's just it's just Tom Waits. So I think Tom Waits and Bruce Springsteen are on the top of my list of folks to photograph.
Yeah. In your opinion, is there a type of sitter that's more suited to this process than others? I mean, if somebody comes to you and you look at them and you're like, oh, wow, this is going to be incredible. What is it that kind of tips you off to that?
Oh, just the character, really. You could. I love photographing men that are wrinkled and have character. Of course, I love photographing beautiful people as well. But yeah, if face has character, I want them sitting in front of my camera. If someone comes through my studio door and they're with their partner, I'm like, oh, don't you want to do individual portraits as well? Because I know they would make a great portrait. Just like a nice tight shot.
Nice. How many, I guess, folks in the music industry have you actually captured with the tintype process? I think I saw maybe a photo of Rob Zombie, but I didn't kind of poke around to see if there were very many of them. And
not a ton. I could kind of go down the list backwards. Like say earlier or last year, I had Coheed and Cambria in my studio. We did Rob Zombie in the pandemic, coming up to Connecticut. That turned out to be a great shoot. He really loved the process. And then, all right, let's see. I shot Warren Haynes, Clutch as a band, Thursday as a band, Nikki Sixx, who also actually shoots tintypes.
Yeah.
So I had him in front. He's like, yeah, I know how to do this. He's like, you're kidding me. He's like, yeah. So we're talking shop. And then on a completely separate shoot, I shot Nick Mars from Motley Crue as well. But
sweet.
Yeah, it's always hard for the tintype process with assignments because of the time allotted. You know?
That's what I wanted to dig into. I didn't know if those people really knew what they were getting into.
Usually they don't. Usually they're convinced they're told, and it's always been a pretty big rush for it too. Like say when I did Nikki Sixx, I think I had a half hour total for the shoot, and I had to shoot digital as well. So it was kind of like you have to really. Honestly, I have regrets from that shoot. Not regrets. I didn't come out with a great Nikki Sixx image. People say they loved it, they're great, but it didn't make me happy. I just didn't have enough time to get it on tintype the way I wanted to. So yeah, you want to have more time, but you rarely do. I'll say with the Rob Zombie, that was supposed to also be a fast shoot, but he got into it. Like he was also at home, so he was comfortable. So he saw what I was doing. He appreciated it, and he gave me more time. I did some portraits of him and his wife as well, and gave it to him, to try to grease him up to get more time. But yeah, when you usually it'll get their attention and people get into it if their schedule allows. But usually it's like time slot. They got to move on to the next thing, because they're doing press days.
Sure. Yep, that's awesome. I've seen a few of the other portraits that stood out to me. There's a great shot of Ron Wood online, and then the Chris Cornell photos are amazing.
Thank you.
Great loss.
Yeah, absolutely.
With him, but pretty amazing to be able to share this process with some of those folks that, again, I guess I would consider them like anybody else. They probably never heard of it, and not very many people get to experience it, right?
Ron Wood wasn't tintype. He was film.
Yeah.
And Cornell as well.
Same thing with Cornell. Yeah.
Ron,
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say Ron Wood, man. He was what a pleasure. Obviously, Rolling Stone, so it was just I was ecstatic, and he brought the energy to that shoot of a kid who started his first band is going to be in his first magazine. Like he was just excited. He was interested. He was charming. Here he's been doing it for what, 50, 60 years, I don't
Right.
know how 100, how long has he been playing the
I
Rolling
don't know.
Stones? Probably 50 years at this point. I don't know. But there he is, happy to be at the shoot, Like, wow, how is this happening right now? Like, how is this guy not just done with photo shoots, you
Right.
know? And yeah, Chris Cornell, he was a beautiful person to work with. He was very nice, very kind.
Nice. Is there anything on your plate other than the kind of work that you're doing now? I mean, do you have any ideas for any other projects or things that you would like to do with the process?
Well, yes, I do want to get back out and work on my fine art street photography, which I don't. It's on the website. It's probably buried. It's probably street under street project. That's something I do want to get back into, but I'm trying to like rebuild my mobile rig because the old one was made out of wood crates and it just weighed a ton, and it was just do I really want to pull it out of the van? Do I really want to get this shot? Do I really want to do this? So I want to kind of like streamline that and just kind of get back out there and just do some street photography again for me and for nobody else.
Nice.
Um, Other than that, I love working out of the studio. That's what's going on, really.
I was going to ask you on your street arrangement that you've got with your van, what does that studio piece look like? I mean, do you have a separate dark box or do you leave all that gear inside of the van?
No,
How
I
do
use
you?
I open up the tailgate of the van and I set up the backdrop, in the van. Like, so you would either sit on the tailgate of the van or you'd sit on a chair in front of the rear of the van. And then I would have two C stands with, Profoto 7Bs. And this was the key. This is the key to my whole setup. The 7B, which is a 1200 watt second pack with the Magnum reflector. The Magnum reflector will give you an extra 2 stops of light. Like, it really focuses the light really well. So back then I didn't have my Bellmeyer. I was using a 5.6 300 millimeter. So, I needed every bit of light to get those exposures.
Yep.
So yeah, and I just had a sales table with samples on the sidewalk, and my dark box was just on a folding table, and it was just all done right there.
Do you find that you needed to kind of pull somebody in and shoot one just to get folks interested or at least let them know what you actually were doing there?
Yes and no. It really, I've tried really hard to figure out what the recipe for success was out there. Like I said earlier, some days like I would be busy all day long. Other days would be just a few. Other days one. Yeah, I could do a test and then people would check it and like, oh, this is cool, and then not purchase it. It really is just chance. It's like who's walking by, who wants to do it. Yeah, that wouldn't necessarily guarantee success. So, you know, other times a line will guarantee success. And once 2 or 3 people line up, then there's like a line like down the street, and you're just rocking and rolling and trying to come up for air every once in a while.
Justin, who are some of the photographers that you look up to or that inspire your work?
I think some of my favorite photographers are throughout the years would really be Annie Leibovitz, Danny Clinch, Louis Stetner, Robert Frank. I think those are my tops. Some of them, like I guess contemporary wet platers, Ian Reuter's work is incredible. He's always moved me. I think he's my favorite modern tintype photographer, wet plate photographer. Yeah, those guys always drive me. Every time I dip back into one of their books or their websites, yeah, it just keeps me going.
Yeah. What sources have you used to kind of inspire the portraits that you take today? I mean, have you looked through like you said you weren't really into history, so you probably didn't get into like, this is how they used to set up, during the Civil War to take these kind of
Yeah.
portraits and things. I mean, what kind of gave you the feeling for how you wanted to sit people and kind of really get them looking the best for this process?
Well, I'll just say that it's not that I'm not into history. It's just that I use this more as a tool. So I'm not really like My approach really isn't much different than how I would approach a modern shoot. I mean, a lot of it in the beginning was just trying to get enough light to make it work, through those strobes. It wasn't easy, when you have those slower lenses.
Sure.
Now that I have the faster lens, I could be a little more creative with what the light modifier is. Really, if you look through my work, if you look at the Ron Wood image, like that light kind of carries through a lot of my portraits. Like you'll see that replicating it in a different way in my Tintype studio, because it can't be the same light, because everything is different with wet plate, of course. But yeah, my main approach is when I sit somebody down, it's just got to make them at ease really quickly. When you're only shooting one Tintype, got to make it count,
Right.
So that's one thing that I could say that I approved as a photographer, is being able to connect with people really quickly doing these pop-ups, whereas you sit down, we take one image, and move on. So it's just like making people feel comfortable so quickly, and that helps, with all my portrait work.
Did you go through an evolution with your lighting setup? I mean, did you start off with the speedotrons and strobes, or did you, hey, the first shot is outside, so I'm going to play around with, direct sunlight for a while, and then maybe move to fluorescence, or did you just go right into strobe work?
I've always had strobes, because of my photography business. So,
yep.
So I mean, I started outside just for ease. I didn't set up strobes for that. Yeah, strobes is what I use all the time, and it was natural for me to turn to that to light my portrait subjects. I've always had speedotrons. I had the 2400 watt second pack, and I was using that, and then eventually I got the 48, because obviously you want more power.
Justin, so what advice do you have for newcomers to this craft, or even other seasoned photographers? You had mentioned some of the struggles that you had getting started. What are some things that you would share with other people that are getting into wet plate, just to kind of help them out?
What I would say is you got to try to keep things simple. I would say when you're starting up with the process, work with daylight first and master the chemicals, and then start working on your lighting. Or don't worry about too much lighting. Just have something consistent. Like even if it's like if you have one consistent light. I always recommend people start off with a chemical kit, a pre-mixed chemical kit, because then the stuff that you have works. You didn't make mistakes, and then you could work out your darkroom techniques, and then learn how to expose a plate. And then once you get a hold of that, you could experiment with a little bit of lighting. And then when you need to, mix your own chemicals, you start mix your developer first. Don't, and then just kind of piece it out. Like grab control of the animal a little bit at a time until you could take control of the animal completely. Just got to keep it simple.
Yeah.
As simple as you can. Yeah. I think that's my basic advice I usually give people who are starting out.
Are there any other resources other than like Quinn's manual that you've referenced as you've tried to learn more about the process, or has that pretty much been your go-to?
Quinn's pretty much been my go-to. His book was very helpful, and he has loads and loads and loads of videos on his YouTube. So there's not much. You don't really need to go anywhere else. Obviously you can, but he always spoke to me. Like I always, like if you could sit down and just listen to that guy for hours. I will tell you this though. UV Photographics in Los Angeles. Have you ever worked with them?
I have. Yeah, I was on a kick to where I was just trying to do my collodion from scratch for a while, so I had ordered a bunch of stuff from them, and it had turned out okay. But it is a bit more of a hassle to mix all that stuff versus just buying the 2-part kit from Bostic and Solomon or some other place.
Yeah, well, one of the things that also drew me into this photography process was the fact that everything had to be made from scratch. Like I just loved that. Like I just loved the idea of like, measure this all out, grind it out, dissolve it, and just do all that. We all love that. And I did a job in Los Angeles with another band I forgot to mention before. Stone Sour, one of the guys from Slipknot with his rock band or whatever. And I ordered my chemicals from Brian at UV Photographics, and I used it. It was great, and I actually shipped them back to me and went back to my house in Jersey. And then I always kept his bottle of collodion in my cooler whenever, like, as a backup. Like, so whenever my collodion acted up or was just giving me problems, I would grab his UVPX, which I purchased, and then before I knew it, I've had this bottle in my box for probably close to a year, and it was always consistent.
Wow.
And I was like, what the fuck? Like, why am I having so much problems here? Right? like I mix something and it'd work great for 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden you have this shit going on. But yet this mysterious bottle,
this 1-year-old bottle,
is still going strong and always consistent. I said, I'm done. I've just been buying it from him, like the premix, and I struggled with it because I wanted to make it on my own. You know what I'm saying? And I still don't like that I have to rely on anybody. I don't have to rely on him. If he stopped selling it, I could, just start mixing it myself again. But like, I just love it so much. And that's why I always tell people, like, yeah, just move. If you move to UVPX, it will always work and it will never be the problem. So that's one part of the elimination problem. Like, oh, well, where's the problem? Well, I know it's not my UVPX unless I contaminated it, because it's rock solid. The stuff is amazing.
It's almost a rite of passage for wet platers to have to go through and mix all of that stuff up at least one time.
Yeah.
And there's probably going to be folks like yourself that are just like, oh man, I love doing this. And then there's going to be people like me that are like, this is too much trouble. I'm going to shoot for consistency and just buy the stuff,
Yeah, I did it reluctantly. Like, I really was I was being real stubborn about it. I'm like, no. Because I also think about like how much money you'd waste on bad collodions that just would turn on you and just not work out. And then time is money, of course. So you're spending all this time trying to figure out this problem. And there's this one goddamn bottle that always works. So
I have got 3/4 of an old Everclear bottle that is full of this bright red collodion that has just been collecting in there for the years. That's been kind of my waste bottle. So
yeah.
I know what you mean. It's like, man, I think about all the plates that I could have shot with that, and it's all spent.
Never threw any of his UVPX out. Always used it right to the end of the bottle.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to check it out.
Yeah.
Justin, do you ever take your show on the road? Have you done any traveling tintypes, or you pretty much stay in the area there?
I pretty much stay in the area. I'm a family man, so I try not to go when I don't have to go. Yeah. I pretty much stay. I mean, I want to, like I mentioned earlier, I want to like have a second setup of equipment where it's like, hey, let's go to Massachusetts and work out of Massachusetts, or let's go on a road trip and do some tintyping. So it's something I do want to do, but we have young kids too, so it's a little pain in the butt. So right now it's mostly local.
And I guess along the same lines as helping people, I think I've saw that you do some occasional workshops.
Occasionally, and it's something that I want to do a little bit more in the future as well. Yeah, I did a few of them before the pandemic, and I'll say this: I did 2 remote workshops through the pandemic. I had some folks reach out to me from Boston. They, Maureen and Dave, they have a business now called Evoke Tintype. And Maureen basically, just out of the blue, messaged me. It's like, hey, I would like to do this remote thing. They had no experience and background in photography, none whatsoever.
Okay.
And basically said, all right, if we're going to do this, you have to have the equipment. So I made her equipment list, and it got it all. And we just did it with, FaceTime, so we can keep the camera moving. And and they picked up on it. And, they did great work. And now they have their business going too. I know for a fact that they did have some in-house workshops afterwards, like in-person workshops, because we all could benefit from seeing it in person. But
sure,
They were able to pick up everything through Zoom and I was so impressed the fact that they had no prior photography experience. So it was a lot of fun working with them.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that is one thing that, like a lot of other communities, even in the online, with Facebook and stuff, there are these different groups, and a lot of times you've got camps of folks that really want to kind of guard their trade secrets or whatever. But it's good to know that there are folks out there willing to kind of give that information out and share it with other folks that are really new to the process.
Well, Chad, the more people who create tintypes means that there's more people who are aware of tintypes. The more people are aware
Absolutely.
of tintypes, the more we all can be more successful.
Yeah, I love that idea. I mean, I don't know how many times, I've set up in different places and I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm shooting tintypes here. And it's like, well, what's a tintype? I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Justin, how do people that want to see your work or maybe even get a portrait taken by you, how do they get in contact with you?
NYCTintype.com. I always have dates posted that you could book right there on NYCTintype.com. If you want to see any of my music photography, it's Borucki.com, but you could access that through NYCTintype.com as well.
Great. All right, Justin. Well, thanks for being on 10 Questions today. I appreciate you joining up with me and sharing some information on your experience in this process.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being patient with me.
My wife and I were actually out in New York a couple of years ago, and I had, at that time, I had started following you. I'm like, man, that would be so cool to just like walk by and see this guy like out on the street doing this shit.
It was fun, man. I got to tell you, I do still miss it. I've been telling my dudes out on the street, I'm like, I'm going to come back. But I'm like, do I want to load up a van and break down the studio? That's why I want to have that second setup.
Yeah.
So I can just go and do that for fun if I wanted to, Yeah, it was fun.
I still have all of my crap sitting around. I shoot in my basement, so I've got.
Yeah.
I actually do have a sink that I plumbed up and in a kind of a full working dark room, but I've still got all of my crap strung everywhere. I went and did a demo at a local high school here a few days ago. Well, let's see, it was on Friday last week. So I've got a session set up for this weekend, so I got to get all my stuff put back together.
Yeah, nice. Oh, actually, there is one more thing I'll add in.
Okay.
Now, I did mention that I've never worked out of a proper dark room. Always out of the dark box, always working out of water bottles.
Yep.
And even in my basement workshop where I do my chemical mixing, I don't have plumbing down there either. And that's always been a pain in the ass. And recently, I set up a slop sink with a Home Depot bucket underneath for the drain. And I got a Ryobi handheld pressure washer, which will pull water from another Home Depot bucket.
Okay.
And I use that to clean my stuff now, and it's life-changing. It's like I have an actual sink, but you don't, because there's no plumbing down there.
Right.
So
hey, you got to do what you got to do, right?
I wish I did it a long time ago. It was torture. Like, to actually clean anything out, I have to go out and hose it off, and in the wintertime it's freezing. It was just a nightmare. I don't know how I kept anything clean before I did this without water. Maybe one day I'll have a frickin' sink with modern plumbing in it. But I guess it's appropriate that I don't.
Well, you're still getting stuff done, so I wouldn't let it bother you too much.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't have plumbing, a lot of times, back in the day. So.
Right.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode and maybe even picked up some insights that will help you along in your own wet play journey. I'd love to hear from you on who you'd like to have on in a future episode. So send me a message and follow our Instagram account at 10 Questions with any feedback. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast provider. Thanks for listening to me, Chad Shryock, and my expert guests, and I look forward to you joining me again in the coming weeks for a new episode of 10 Questions.